Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Road to 2200. The first episode was published just a couple of days ago, and I still can't believe how many people watched and liked the video. It's amazing, and thank you all for the support of the channel. So, for today's game, we're going to analyze a Vienna Gambit. It contains a lot of theory, and I think it's going to be very instructive. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you liked the video. Also, leave a comment about what you would like to see in future videos. Let's dive straight into the game. So for the opening, I decided to play the move e4. I really like e4. It's very theoretical compared to, for example, d4. When you know a lot of theory and you are very accustomed to the positions you get, I think e4 is very much for preference, but the d4 players might disagree with me. So against e4, he played the move e5, very solid. He just takes control of the center just like I did. And now I play the move knight c3, entering the Vienna. And there's a lot of things that black can do. For example, move knight c6, move knight f6. Also, c6 is a variation I really find annoying, so I was glad not to see it. He decided to play the move knight f6. And in this variation, I know a lot of theory. For example, you can play the move bishop to c4, entering the main line. But I decided to go for the move f4, which just creates more entertainment for you viewers. But also, I like the positions I get a lot. Because after f4, if he decides to take my pawn, it's very bad because I can now push the pawn to e5. As you can see, these squares are all taken by the knight and the queen. So he has to always move back to g8. And right now, we first play the move knight f3 because if we don't, the queen gets to h4 and checks us, which is really annoying. Also, g3 wouldn't be as fun because there's a pawn on f4. But after knight f3 and, for example, d6, you just take the center with d4 and it's a very pleasant position. But instead of that, he decided to go for the main line, which is d5. And d5 is very theoretical. You can now, after f takes e5 and knight takes e4, play many variations. For example, knight f3 is very common. But I like to play a more trickier sideline, which is the move queen to f3. There's a lot of things black can do right now. There's the Bardeleben variation with f5. Also, there's the move knight c6. And you can also just take the knight immediately. Now, he played the move knight c6, which I also play myself as black if I ever play e5. And this is a very tricky move because you might think, well, I can just take this knight. And after he takes back, I take back with the queen. But when you take this knight, there's an intermediate move. There's knight to d4. And that's really annoying because if you play knight to d4, your queen gets attacked and also the c2 square. So you almost have to defend with queen to c3. And after that, you can take the knight and this queen defends the knight and he's really active here. Also, it can be attacked because the queen is on c3. Now, this position is a little bit better for black, so I decided not to go for it. And after knight c6, there's the move bishop to b5. I think it's the best move. The computer agrees with me. You just pin this knight and threaten to take the knight again. And now you can take this pawn because this knight can't move to d4 anymore. So here he decides to take the knight, which is just the best move because else you just get taken and the pawn is lost. So I decide to take with the b pawn. And the d pawn is also a good option. Actually, the computer likes it a bit more because you open the d file and after you castle, there's a rook staring at this queen. There's something to say for it, but after this, I really like it that I am able to play d4 if black doesn't do anything about it. And in this game, he decided to play the move bishop d7, which is already an inaccuracy. I totally agree with that. Well, there is a threat to take this pawn and simultaneously attack this queen and the bishop. And if I take the bishop with check, he can take with the knight and he's just a pawn up. I get to play the move d4 now. And when I play d4, you might think, well, knight takes e5 is still available. But now there's the move queen takes d5. And after this, well, you might think, well, you can just fork the pieces now and you just go up a piece. But don't forget that if you take the knight, it's with check. So we can play a move like c6. And right now, for example, if he takes the bishop, I get to take back with check. And after that, he just has to block with the knight again. And I think I'm just better here. I have more control of the center. He is not developed at all. So I would have preferred this position. But I think he saw that and didn't go for knight takes e5, which I agree with. But he decided to do something else. He decided to play the move a6, which is also an inaccuracy, and I completely understand why. Because this bishop has done its thing on the square. He pinned the knight when it was necessary, but right now it's no longer necessary. So playing the move e6 just makes me get a free move that can improve the square of my bishop. So after bishop d3, he should be really discouraged to actually castle on the king side. But he went for it anyway, so let's see what happens. First, he moves the bishop once again to e6. And this is just a bad move because you don't want to move the bishop twice. I agree with him that his bishop on d7 wasn't really good, but moving it again is just a waste of tempo. He should have gone for a queen trade like this, queen h4, after g3, move to the g4 square with his queen, and then try to trade it off. But instead of doing that, he just moved the bishop twice, which gives me an advantage in development. So right now I first play the move queen to g3, which really makes his bishop unable to move, or he has to do something with his structure. And if he plays g6 like he did in the game, these dark squares get really weak and this bishop will be able to enter them in a later stage. So right now I play rook to b1, just creating more danger on the queen side and letting him create more weaknesses for himself. He plays the move b5, which I wouldn't really recommend because this is just a bad structure right now. His pawn is backwards and also this knight becomes undefended. This square is really weak also, so there's a lot of weaknesses in his position. He could have played the move knight a5, but I wouldn't have found it myself to defend this pawn. It's kind of obvious, but also not, because why the hell would you go to this side of the board? What he does do right now, after b5, and I play the move knight e2. Also, why I play knight e2 instead of going to f3, I really like this piece being able to go to the f4 square because then he attacks this bishop. Also, via f3, I could have gone to, for example, g5, but after that he might be able to play a move like h6 if I go to f3. So I wouldn't really like that. So in e2 he can move to the f4 square without being attacked. Then I would be able to trade this bishop off, which really holds his position together. Now after knight e2 he decides to make the move bishop to e7, making a threat, but I was really going to castle anyways after this turn. But if I don't, he has to move bishop to h4, which pins my queen to the king. And I've blundered this a couple of times. It's not fun. You just lose the game automatically. So I castle, preventing that. After that, he decides to castle as well. This is going to be the end of the opening. I think I'm already a bit better, so let's push to the win. After black castled, I think he's in a lot of trouble because all my pieces are staring at this castled king, and he's going to be in very much danger. And I started with the move bishop to h6, which attacks the rook and also just goes into these dark squares and asks some questions about why he castled in the first place. So right now he could have made an intermediate move, bishop to h4, and after that I would have moved my queen and then he could have moved his rook, but he just decided to move his rook first. And after that I could play the move knight to f4. And on f4 it attacks the bishop. It's also attacking this pawn, so the bishop can't move. And I'm just getting ready to capture the piece. And right now he does play the move bishop to h4, which just makes sure I have to move. At least that's what he thought. But I have an intermediate move, which is just to take this bishop. Because if I take the bishop and he takes my queen, I can take his queen and attack this knight at the same time. So then I attack the knight and the bishop on this square because it's attacked by the pawn. And he has to make a choice. So if he takes my knight back, for example, I get to take the bishop and I'm just a piece up. So after knight takes e6, he has to take back the knight, and he did with the rook, which I agree with. He just wants to move the f-pawn and after that stack his rooks on the f-file. Just create as much of a disturbance that my attack isn't strong enough anymore. I do have to move away now. The computer really likes to move queen to g4. Why, I don't really understand, because it seems like a normal move. Choosing between f3 and g4 wouldn't matter as much, I would think. But grandmasters and the engine would disagree with me. I decided to move to f3 just stacking my pieces on the F file, which is open, and that would be a great idea, I think. And after that, he plays the move F5. It's a good move because right now I have to make a choice either to take it and let this rook come to the F file, or not to take it and let him get this very solid structure against my bishop. So I decided to take, which is fine, I guess. And then he took back with the rook, which I expected actually, but right now I got to play the move queen to g4 anyway. So if it was already here, I would have been a bit better, I think, in this variation. So now it comes out where the move g4 was, queen to g4 was better than the move queen to f3. After this, he plays the move g5, which I think is a mistake. The engine gives it an okay move, but there's right now a killer move for white, which is the move queen to h5. And I missed that. But after that, for example, if you take the rook and I take back, there's going to be a threat on the back line and you're just going to win a queen. Also, this bishop is going to be trapped if you don't pay attention. So that's a way better version for white as what I got. But I got a winning position anyway after g5 because I played the move g3. The move g3 catches this bishop immediately. He isn't able to move it anymore, but it just leaves my bishop hanging. After this, I had the idea that if I take back, and he takes back with the rook, I get this check on e6, and I win this knight, which is undefended after playing the move b5. So the move rook b1 was also really important. He also can take back with the pawn because it's pinned to the king. So I thought I was just better here. But what turns out, he has to move queen to d6, and somehow this holds it all together. I can't take this pawn with the queen because then he pins my queen to the king. So right now, what I could have done is actually play the move h5 myself. I wouldn't have found it in the game. I think it's too much of a computer move. After that, I would be able to take the pawn. But pushing this pawn is really counterintuitive because it's already pinned to the king and you really want to take the pawn. But instead of queen d6, he actually played the move rook takes h4, which just walks into this. And now he moves to h8 and I take the knight. Now my piece up and it just becomes endgame technique again. The game won't go on for much longer, but I will try to play out the endgame as much as possible. From here, there's not many moves left. The opponent trusted me in being able to win the endgame from here. Well, not exactly here, but he first moved his rook out of the way. And after that, I just decided to trade queens, and I can do that by checking on f6. After that, if he moves, I can just collect the queen, and after that take the open file. And if he doesn't move, for example, he just takes, I take back with the rook. And right now, this rook is attacking the a6 pawn, which is really important. And also, he just doesn't have much to play for. He started with a check on g4, and when I went to f2, he checked me on f4, trading off a pair of rooks, and I really enjoyed that because two rooks in these kinds of endgames is always better than one rook. Now, I took the open file, which is a really important move. If I didn't do that and, for example, went to g1, which is also an open file, but then I couldn't enter his position from these squares because the king covers it. And on the E file, I am able to move in, and he can't move into the E file himself. So he could just take the open file on the G file, but I'm also covering these squares and this square with the pawn. So in this position, he decided to resign, which I was really happy with because I only had 1 minute left. I would have been able to prove that I was better and win the game, I think, but it's just always a struggle to move very fast without making mistakes. Now, he could have, for example, played on by playing the move rook c8, and after that trying to play the move c5. I think I would have gone for that plan, but after that I have to move rook e7, entering his position, just putting pressure on all of these pawns. For example, this one also defended by the bishop, and yeah, there's not much he can do. When he moves c5, for example, I just take, and after that I'm able to collect some of the pawns here by, let's say, playing the move rook to d7, attacking this one. And if he takes, and enters my position, there's no real trouble because I can just move over here and if he pushes the pawn, take this pawn, and there's no way for him to defend all his pawns. I would have been able to win this. I'm really sure. I'm a pawn up and also piece up, and this is just trivial for players of this rating. I hope you really enjoyed the video. It's not a great endgame, but there's going to be many more where there's a lot of complications. I'm not going to be able to win a piece every time. So I really enjoyed making this video. I love playing these games for you, and I hope you really like watching them as well. I really hope to see you in the next video. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. I just love you all for watching this. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye bye.